All right. So thank you so much everyone for showing up. We are so excited to share some of the work that we have been working on. As some of you might remember, we've been paused since July of 2021. And so this is basically what we have been in the works, heads down, working on is this guidebook for home funerals. And I'm honestly so proud of the work that we have done over these last few years. It has been truly a incredible team effort. And so I'm just gonna go ahead and turn it over to Lashana to talk a little bit about, the inception of why we're doing this and talk a little bit about the book guidebook that I'm then going to walk you through afterwards.
Thank you. Thank you, Isabel. And thank you, y'all, for your time tonight. It's a pleasure to see faces and know that other people are also like, I'm kind of interested in this. So that feels good. The updating of our educational materials it's a natural thing. It's what has to be done with pieces of information and education. So we really took it to heart and looked at all of our educational materials and thought, how can we do better? How can we do better by us and better by the people who use this material? And so we were able to really comb through and adjust language. We were able to increase who the material spoke to by just tiny tweaks in language. We worked hard to take out some of the binaries in what was being offered, like the right and the wrong, because there's so many ways to care for people in death and dying. Um, and and one of the most important things to follow in line with the NHFA's mission and values was like the gaining control over the copyright aspect of the material so that we could offer this material out to people for free. Not just free, but also update it as frequently and as often as needed, because like things are consistently changing and we're always learning. So this document, like it gets to be a live document. It's made in a way that it can be easily updated, that it's not a long process, and we don't have a couple cases of books to get through before we can do another reprint. um, and it also allows for contribution from community, like continuously. So that means, like, as you're listening to this, if you have some information that once you go through the book and you're like, oh, y'all, like this is missing, how do we add it to, like, you get to send an email and say just that and be a part of this collaborative community effort to create and share this information with folks, like really widely and in ways that speak to people who like to read about it, or who like to see visuals or need a visual on, like, how do I do this? So you'll see some of those things in this workbook where it wasn't present before. And in this workbook, I'm sure there's all kinds of ways that we can improve. So please also gently share that with us too. And I say gently because we just worked our behinds off, and like, give us a minute to be like, whoo, we did it. But also, please tell us where we can do better. Um, and I would like to let Isabel show you this beautiful piece of work.
Awesome. Thank you. That was so great. One of the things that we're definitely still really interested to have people, I mean, all of it we would love feedback on. One of the things as we're going through this book, and I'm so excited to share it with you, is one of the things we really, really want to do is make sure that this was as diverse and representative of like the whole population as it possibly can be. And so if anybody here or, anybody who listens to this recording later has any photos that you would really be willing to share with us so that we can share it with the broader, home funeral community, we would love to be able to incorporate those photos as well. We would love more photos of, people of all different skin colors, of all different abilities. And so that's one thing as we're going through, I wanted to just like, if you have any photos that you have done, if you've done a home funeral yourself, would love to be able to share that with other people. So this is the book. It's 162 pages long. So we these are some of the people who have worked on it. We had some incredible photos that were contributed. We had some incredible illustrations that were created. And you are free to use this. This is all free and available to the public. So the one thing you can't do is take it and go, use it for a paid course. But other than that, please, we really highly encourage you to share this resource with your community. So here are some of the contents in this book. So we start off with an introduction just to get you acclimated to what home funerals are, who we are, and then we go into the nitty gritty of planning a home funeral. So each section has a little table of contents specific to that section. And so the first thing that we have in this planning a home funeral section is a checklist, which was really important to me, is that we just have like a basic checklist that you can go to. And one other thing I also wanted to note is that all of the printable materials, such as this checklist, we made available in the appendices as well, because the expectation is not that you print out this entire 162-page document. If you just want to be able to print the printable elements of it, because we have some sample forms in here, this checklist and other great resources that you can print for yourself. That's all. We have a little like cost worksheet that you can do if you're trying to figure out the cost of what your home funeral is going to be. That's all in the back in the appendix. So you can just print out those few pages. So that's what's involved in this planning. We kind of had this section is really laid out in terms of a like who, what, where, when, why. And then we thought about basically before, during, and after the home funeral, what are you going to need to think about? So we have lots of visuals. We have some diagrams of like, what does a phone tree look like? What are some of the, documents that you need to think about getting in advance? How do you find a home funeral friendly funeral home? Things like that. So that's kind of what's involved in this planning section. I'm going to skip ahead to the building community section. And then Tula, by the way, when we get to body care, I'll let you speak a little bit to the infant and child section. So the building community section basically talks about how do you, and one of the things we thought about a lot as we were going through this process is like, how can you really make sure, because home funerals really require a whole community to come in and help, right? Like people can't necessarily move a body just by themselves. Even if you hire, a home funeral guide or a doula, it really involves a lot of community involvement. So some of the things we talk about in here is like thinking about who is your community? Who's going to be on your community death care team? We define community death care as being specifically like, unpaid community work that people, in the community are doing. And this is something that, in my opinion, is like a pretty radical concept, right? Of just people gathering together and helping each other in a time when I think a lot of us feel very isolated. So that's why I felt like this section was so important. And so we talk about how do you do some of that community organizing to get that team together. And so the next section, and we talk a little bit about how do you build trust? How do you try to make sure as many different community members can be involved as possible? And then the next section after this is the body care section. So this is one of the biggest sections. We talk about all of the ins and outs of how to care for a body at home. So it can be in a clinical or institutional setting as well. So we talk about things like, how do you move a body? Where are you going to be? We have photos of turning, we have diagrams of like, this is how long it takes for rigor mortis to set in, things like that. And we have a lot of incredible We have some incredible illustrations that were done by Sky and Day. And some videos as well as podcast episodes that you can click on and go watch as well. So we try to include as much multimedia in here as possible. So we also have a section within the body care section on infant and child death care. And I'll let Tula speak to this section a little bit while I go find the page. Because Tula and Michelle worked really hard on this section as well.
Well, infant and child death care is highly specialized because the bodies are so small and the circumstances and situations are different than adult. And there is more of a connection with the clinical setting as well, and being able to provide that support and information came from organic and unfolding and dialogue of a need. And a part of that need is the advocacy piece to what we're sharing, and that continued dialogue of how to work with babies and how to work with children and their families and communities, and that recognition piece and sharing community. And we are open to the idea that smaller bodies, little bodies, have a delicate approach.
Yeah. So that was like truly a labor of love on both of their parts. So I really, really want to extend my thanks to both of you. And Tula is actually going to be doing our first webinar in later this month. So I'll let Angela talk about that later, but that's something that you all can look forward to as well. And then the next section that we have is basically a section on disposition options. So the last step of caring for a body, how do you basically properly dispose? And so we talk about all of the different burial options, whether it be conventional burial, burial at sea, a natural burial, cremation, including alkaline hydrolysis or water cremation. And then also, how do you do a home funeral if you're planning on donating to science? Or, what about if you're embalming, things like that. So all of that, we've got a ton of, pictures in here of like, what does it actually look like to see, bones come out of a water cremation versus a flame cremation, things like that. And so that is kind of an overview of that disposition section. And then second to last, we just have a section on grief and vigils. And so this section just talks about some of like the theories around grief. We kind of talk about some of the like the ball in the box theory, or like the ring theory of how to properly kind of think about how to share the emotional labor of caring for someone who is grieving. And so we have a lot of useful tips in here around, how to care for yourself or others while someone is grieving. And then this last section is the appendices. So there's a lot of useful content in here as well, specifically around cases that might be like in cases of organ donation, of autopsy, maybe there is decomposition going on or trauma to the body. So some of those, more specific cases we have put in the appendix. We also have, some photos of what happens when you have like skin donations, things like that, and how you can still do a home funeral in those cases as well. And then at the very end, we have some information that you can print. Everything after Appendix C is printable information. So we have declarations of final disposition that you can use as a sample. We have this checklist that I showed you all earlier, a sample death certificate worksheet. So there's just a lot of good information in here. And with that, I will stop sharing and turn it over to, let's see, who's the person that I'm turning it over to. I'm going to turn it over to Angela to talk about some of our speakers that we're going to have coming up as part of our unpausing. We're going to start having speakers again. So Angela, take it away.
Why, thank you. So one of the things that we paused when we paused our outward-facing activities is we paused having speakers and regular webinars, and we are really excited that we have been developing what we hope and what we hope will continue to be an inclusive list of speakers who can speak on a wide variety of topics. And it's also important to note that all of the speakers that we are going to ask to present, we will ask them to present in a way that is accessible and inclusive. So accessibility of format, accessibility of the information, and also just inclusivity, like being able to share a lot of different facets of our lived and dying experiences so that we can really learn from one another and honor the experiences. So our first one, as Isabel mentioned, is going to be Tula. Thank you for giving the little preview of what they can expect to learn at your webinar on infant and child care, as an end-of-life doula who focuses on palliative and perinatal care. We're really looking forward to that. And then the next one that we have lined up is going to be from presenter Jordan Rose. Let me make sure that I'm getting their last name. No, Rose is the last name. So, with Jordan Rose looking at protecting identity in death for queer, trans, and non-binary folks. So we are working on the date for that, but that's going to be June or July. And then we've got other topics, just as a teaser for what's going to be coming up. Disenfranchised grief, pet death care and pet memorials, memento mori art from different cultures, green burial, community death care, which we already heard a little bit about, so let's make more of that happen. Support after a murder, violent death, so lots of different topics that we have coming up. We would also like to reiterate a call for speakers. So just like if you see things that are missing in the guidebook, if you see things that are missing in our public offerings, our speakers, our webinars, please put your name in the hat. Reach out. We are interested. We want to hear a wide variety of those topics and opinions and learn from each other. So that, I think, is what I wanted to say about speakers. Is there anything that other people wanted me to say that I didn't?
No, I think you're good.
Get excited. That's what I want to say. Get excited. Get hyped. And I think from here, oh yeah, you can turn it over to somebody else.
Okay. So another thing that we're excited about is that we took on 2 student board members who are current students in mortuary school in the past few months. And so one major project that we've been working on is trying to make sure that our legal requirements webpage is up to date. So I'm going to turn it over to Sinead to talk about that project that she and the other student board member Chantel have been working on.
Hi, I'm Sinead. I'm based out of Eugene, Oregon. And yeah, me and my fellow student Chantel came on in February, and we're kind of set in the direction of updating these state requirements. And it was a lot of work. There's 50 states. We had some great community help filling in some of that information. But the main goal was to try to get every one of the 50 states, get the information current, the most recent statutes and codes, have it complete, have all of our questions answered. And the main ones we were focusing on is, do you need to hire a funeral director for anything? Are there preservation time requirements? How long do you have with your person at home? Is embalming required for any reason? And what's the communicable disease reporting process? So we were trying to find that information for all of the states and make sure that that information was accurate. So that is in the process of being worked through and updated on the website. Part of that we wanted to do was verify with each state, whether that was their health board or their mortuary funeral board, verify that the information we're putting out there is accurate, because unsurprisingly, a lot of it is not, there's not specific laws talking about home funerals. And so making sure that the information we're sharing does actually apply to home funeral families. And so we've done some calling of health boards, mortuary boards, and have not gotten a whole lot of response back. It seems like nobody really wants to take charge for verifying the information. But we are working with lawyer Rose, I believe is her name, and she's working to help verify that information for us. And once we get through those 50 states, get the verbiage kind of uniform, we'll be updating the webpage with that and with links to the sources that we found our information. Once that is updated, we would love feedback from the community on what else would be helpful to know at a glance. This process was so difficult for us, and so we therefore can understand how difficult it would be for families who are trying to figure these things out, maybe with a very short period of time. And so we would love to know kind of which topics legally folks would like to see have easy access on our website. That's sort of at a glance information. So your feedback is welcome as we continue to update those requirements. And yeah, we want to, since it's not easy to figure out what is required in your state, we want to try to make that process as easy as we can for folks interested in planning home funerals. So that's kind of a little bit about that process and where we're at with that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And then I'm going to turn it over to Leilani to talk a little bit about our new board member search that we are going to be conducting this year.
Yes. Hello. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here with us today. It's exciting that folks made it out. For some of you, it's middle of the day on a Friday. Some of you, it's Friday night. And the fact that regardless of what time zone you're in, you decided to share space and hang out with us today, it is awesome and much appreciated. So, as you can see so far, with some of the work we're doing, do you like it? Do you want to also be doing it? We need some new board members. So if this sounds like the kind of stuff you would like to spend your time on, and you're looking for something new and exciting to get involved with, please join. We have a couple openings right now actually for the board, and also come towards the end of the year, several of us, our time is up. We'll have been on the board for 3 years. I know my time's up in October, which I'm pretty sad about, but also excited to make way and make room for new folks. So please, if you have any interest, I'm gonna actually put a link in the chat real quick for a form. But yeah, it's fun. Honestly, the people on the board are like the coolest people I know, and working with NHFA, I've met the coolest people I know in general too. And I get to do this work. I've loved it, but also, yes, that's the board member application. And that's in the chat if you're interested. And also conversely, I said, if you like what you see, also, if you don't like what you see, if there's something you wish we were doing, you might be the right person for the board. And also, if you can think of somebody who's not here right now, who's not getting this message, who you're like, oh, they would be good at this, please send them our way, because like I didn't decide to join on my own. Somebody asked me if I would be interested and sent the application my way. So please, we need folks. It's a volunteer opportunity to do good stuff for our community. And if you're interested, please apply. And I'm going to go ahead and actually share a slide for our next section, because one of our folks sadly couldn't be here today, who really wanted to be one of our board members, to talk about envisioning the future. So this is Tanya. I think Winks, I'm handing it over to you for this section, or Isabel, one of you.
Oh yeah, I can go. So yeah, if you've been to our community chats, you've probably seen Tanya. Tanya has hosted a lot of them along with Leilani. And Tanya was super bummed that she couldn't be with us today. But she sends hellos and gratitude to everyone. So she was really excited to share what's going on next for the NHFA now that we have sort of completed this project, and are looking towards the future initiatives that we're going to be working on. So some of the things that we have in mind, and we would love feedback on, what direction you think we should be looking at as well, is some website updates, going back and making sure that we are updating the language on our website to make sure that it's as inclusive as possible, such as like things like removing gendered language. The Speakers Bureau that Angela spoke about is something, or sorry, this is a different thing. The speakers is the thing that Angela talked about, but we're also looking to grow a Speakers Bureau for people who would like to go out and educate their communities about home funerals. And so we would love, if you're someone who's interested in doing this, whether it be at, funeral homes, at community groups, at churches, or synagogues or other religious community groups, at libraries, like all of these types of communities are fair game to do some of this educational work. And so if you're interested in helping us with that effort, we're always trying to grow our Speakers Bureau, and we can help you with slide decks that you can use and guidebook content that you can use for some of those presentations to your communities. And then the last thing is just outreach, such as growing our directory listings for home funeral friendly funeral homes, especially in states where you are required to work with a funeral director, such as states where you might need a funeral director to fill out a death certificate or to help with transportation. We would especially love to be able to help people in those states find a funeral director who can help them with some of that. So those are some of the things that we're looking forward to, but we also want to get your input on what you think is the best direction for us to look into. So I'm going to turn it over to Winks to talk about a community survey that we are currently doing to get feedback from you all on what you think is most important for us to do home funeral wise.
Thank you. And someone put in the chat that the last form was requesting permissions. I'm going to figure out what's going on with that. Hopefully there's not the same issue with our survey, but if it is, I'll send out a usable link to everybody.
I don't think it should be happening with the survey because 5 people have taken it already.
That's a good point. Okay, we're good. So I'm going to go ahead and actually just put this link in the chat. Oops. So this is a link to our survey. Right now, we're just wanting to kind of, as we go forward, as we're unpaused, figure out what you all would like to see most from us. So this is a quick survey. There's only 4 sections. One to just get a feel for the sort of projects you might like to see from us. We're looking at expanding our state requirements page even more, doing additional advocacy work, making more educational materials. There's also in other fields, so if there's something not in that list that you'd like to see, please, by all means, just write it in. We're also interested to see sort of where you're engaging with our content the most. We kind of have a mix of places online that we do different events or post different content, but getting a feel for what works best for you all will help us kind of focus on those areas a little bit more going forward. And then finally, we have a section to see which days of the week you're most likely to be able to attend some community events or the webinar series that we're doing. We have been doing our community chats on Mondays every month, but if there are better days of the week, we would love to know. And so that way we can kind of mix up the schedule a bit if needed. And then lastly, we just have a space for additional feedback. So if there's anything that you would like to see from us or to let us know, please fill it in, and we just would love to hear from you all.
Awesome.
And that's basically it. Thanks.
And Winks put the link to the survey in the chat as well, so we don't have to keep the QR code up, but we wanted to just open it up and hear from you all about any questions you might have on any of the things that we covered today, or any comments, whatever you guys want to talk about. So if you want to just raise your hand, yeah, Chris, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. This is my first exposure to your organization, and I am very impressed. I live in Bethesda, Maryland. I run a deaf and dying group here. I'm writing a book on deaf and dying, and I serve on several boards here related to deaf and dying. And I'm very interested in your organization and what you're doing, and I commend you. I think it's great. I had two quick questions. One was, I've read that if you want to donate organs, then you should be or have to be at a hospital because they need to harvest them fairly quickly after death. And I was wondering, therefore, if organ donation was incompatible with a home funeral, at least a death at a home. And then my second question was, do you recommend for home funerals having a death doula or someone like that to help?
Well, Angela, I saw you shaking your head, so do you want to take that question?
Sure. So the first answer that I have for you, Chris, is that everything varies from state to state. But I am a licensed mortician here in Minnesota, and currently in Minnesota, organ donation and tissue donation are not incompatible with a home funeral. If the person is going to donate large organs like heart, lung, kidneys, things like that, that usually needs to be recovered from a donor who is what they call a beating heart donor, so that they are brain dead, but then their organs are continuously perfused with blood and oxygen, so that those internal organs are recoverable, usable. And so those processes, those recoveries do generally need to take place in a hospital with the person who has died on life support. However, there are lots of other ways that a person can donate. They can donate skin, long bone, eyes, bone tissue, sinews, or like nerves. There's just a plethora of different things that can be done. And most of those recoveries don't need to happen in a hospital. They can take place in a hospital. They can also take place in a local funeral home, at the coroner or medical examiner's office. So that's all true here in Minnesota. So not incompatible, but we've got a whole separate chapter on it because that's a little different, right? It's if the person's going to need special considerations, their body will. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
It's a very good answer. Thank you so much, Angela.
No extra charge.
Susan, you can go ahead.
Okay, well, let me just start by saying kudos to all you who worked on that guidebook. It looks just beautiful. And what a way to break your pause. I think that was a wonderful splash back into your community here. So that's kind of all I want to say. I just wanted to say thank you for putting all that time in. It looks really beautiful, and I look forward to posting it and just getting it out in the world. So well done.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
And just to give a shout out to Susan, is also a former board member. So we appreciate that you still support us and that you showed today. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I did want to just say, I think I fixed that link problem. I put a board member application and nomination form in the chat. So if you all want to check those out, the permissions issue should be solved, but definitely let me know if not.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing that, Winks. Does anyone else have questions or comments you want to share? Yeah, go ahead, Tila.
I just wanted to share how beautiful and powerful this is for voice, narrative, and connection. And just to witness this happening is phenomenal. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Yeah, Lauren.
I want to thank you so much for updating the materials. It's a really important thing and I appreciate it more than I could possibly say. And there are materials that I'll feel more comfortable sharing now that they're more inclusive. I was poised to try to garner some support for getting the law changed in New York, where I'm from. And then COVID happened and I, was in touch with a couple people at the national level. And, at the beginning of COVID, it was like, this is probably not a good time when, as we're dealing with, this infectious disease, probably not a good time to try to convince anybody that it's safe to have people at home. So maybe we should let this just lie for a while. And I'm wondering what kind of support or like legal expertise or anything there might be available going forward. I know the person that would have been the most likely to be able to testify before Congress, for instance, is, or if there was a suit brought or something like that, that person is probably not anyone I'd want to be connecting with. Anyway, I'm not wanting to get into that too much, but I'm wondering some thoughts on what, if anything, might be available for changing laws in New York State.
Yeah, that's a great question. I personally have been in conversations with people recently about trying to figure out what we can do from an advocacy standpoint as a 501c3. I'm not super familiar with nonprofit laws, but my understanding is that in order to do that kind of advocacy work, you have to be a 501c4. But some of the things that we have been throwing around in terms of ideas as a board for how we can help advocate for making home funerals more accessible is things like calling hospitals and asking them to clarify their hospital release policies, because that is a huge barrier for people. Connecting with funeral homes to just make sure that they understand how to help home funeral families, and trying to maybe change some of the norms around them seeing home funerals as sort of an adversarial thing, and actually like it's just another opportunity for you to help people, which is why so many people got into the funeral director business in the first place. So doing outreach to funeral directors and helping them understand how to help home funeral families is another one. And also just like trying to make it as easy as possible for people to do, some of the logistical things like filing a death certificate would be huge, because if you don't have access to the EDRS or the electronic death record system, it can be a lot more inconvenient to have to, bring in a paper form, for example. And funeral directors often do have access to that EDRS system. And I see, Liz, that you're talking about advocacy is legal as long as it doesn't represent a substantial part of the operations. That's really helpful. And if you have more information on this, would love to follow up with you, because I personally would love to learn more about what what we can and can't do in that realm. And maybe Lauren, if you know more about that kind of thing, that would be helpful for you to educate us on that too. Yeah.
All right, thank you. That's helpful. Yeah, I mean, in New York, we wind up paying thousands of dollars to someone who may not even see a body or touch a body or have any contact at all with a body, and is basically just sort of an, kind of an unwelcome bystander. So that's can be challenging and can be a hit in the pocketbook, and also just feel like it can be a real sting for families. So thanks.
Yeah, no problem. And Lauren, if you want to, I know we've emailed before, but I just put my email in the chat again. If you want to send me an email to follow up more specifically on some of that, I would love to keep the conversation going for sure. Anyone else? And, board members, if you all want to share even more, I'm sure there's like other things we could talk about for sure in this process.
I would just want to, thank everybody, again, all the folks who worked on the guidebook. And thank you, of our volunteers. Thank you so much, Tula. You put so much time and effort into helping us with the pediatric piece. We really, really couldn't have done that without you. And I want to really encourage folks to share this far and wide. If you have a website, please put it on link it somewhere. If you can send it out to a listserv you're on, you know, please share it far and wide, because we want it in many hands as possible. Of course, donations are welcome, but we don't expect anyone to pay for it. We just want it free. We wanted to make it free, accessible, out there for everyone. So please think of who you can share this with, and on your social media, whatever, because we really just want this to reach as many people as possible, so they have the tools that they need and the information they need, and can see how accessible home funerals can be.
Mhm. And for the people who I know, actually, I don't think any of the other board members have actually seen Sky and Day in person, but I just wanted to shout out to Sky and Day, who are both on the call today. They did our illustrations, and they did it on like such a tight turnaround. So I really, really wanted to give a shout out to both of you, that like we so appreciate the illustrations that you put together. They're beautiful. And you know, if you all want to say anything, like I'm happy to you know, give you that platform also. But thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you so much for having us on board. It was really cool to be a part of it. Yeah. I was waiting up for a good time to jump in, but didn't know when. So thanks for prompting that. Yeah.
Totally.
Glad we could be a part of it.
Yeah. Awesome.
You know, I don't, I'm an extrovert. So somebody take the mic from me if we need to, but I just want to kind of elaborate a little bit on what Isabel and I were talking about just the other day, and how this guidebook and our work, our future facing work, really feels important, because we have lost so much connection, obviously over the pandemic, but just in general, our busy lives separate us, and they make us individuals, and it can be so lonely. And I think that community death care, community efforts, being able to use this as an excuse to reach out, connect with people, find your resources, find your people, and just connect on a human level. That's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about home funerals and community death care, is because we are separated from one another, and we're separated from our dead, and we shouldn't be. I don't think, because this is another aspect of being human, and it is so raw, so fundamentally human to all of us. It is the great uniter, and there is a lot of beauty that can be found there. So I'm so proud of this guidebook. Even though, like, I mean, the effort that has been put into it is astonishing to me, and I'm so proud of what we are being able to put out there. And I think that this is a great jumpstart for the future of the organization, in terms of fostering and encouraging human to human connections and spreading that message far and wide. Okay, I'm gonna stop.
No, I wanted to piggyback on that, because like what we were talking about was just like, yeah, how when we're living in a time where there's so much technological mediation, and it's like people are kind of scared to like open the door when someone knocks on your door, or pick up the phone and like talk to someone in person, is like, how do you do this kind of community organizing, especially when we have seen statistically, over the last many years, decreases in sort of civic engagement, and like, people being part of groups generally, like, across the board, whether it's like church groups, whether it is like, civic group, like clubs, like I don't know if anyone on here has read Bowling Alone, but it's basically like that, right? The social groups are kind of deteriorating. And so this is really a call to get people to be re-engaged in that.
That's a very good book.
Mm-hmm. And there's a new documentary out called Join or Die, which is also about the same topic, that I just saw in March. And the whole premise of it is that being part of a social group lowers your chances of dying in the next year by 50%.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah. So, and it's tough because I've been trying to, I'm based here in Philadelphia, and I have been trying to get together community death care groups for the past several months. And it is hard to just even get people to respond to your emails, right? Much less, get people to get together in person and talk about difficult subjects and like try to promote this work. So it's something that I really, really encourage people to try to do, because it's something that is so sorely needed. It is basically a form of mutual aid, that I think would be so valued by all of the communities that we're in. Yes, totally, Angela. Um, oh yeah, so the two books that I mentioned, well, one is a book, one is a documentary. The book is called Bowling Alone, and it's by Robert Putnam. And the documentary is called Join or Die. So highly recommend both. Gesundheitlich. Thank you, Leilani, for adding that in there.
I think too, like it's okay to start small and go slow. Like as you look at this book and as ideas come up, like don't feel a sense of urgency to like create this group and do these things and all of it. Like you can like carry that excitement, but not the pressure. Allow yourself space to like learn about really what's going on around you. What are people doing? Because there are people doing it. Like trust assured, people are caring for other people who are dying already. And how do you get to like get in that fold and like maybe like link the people together, right? Start creating the spider web of community care, that network. And like the way that you get to engage in that, like if you start slow and intentional, like that's going to carry you through. And if you start fast and unorganized, that's going to carry you through. So just like think of how you would talk to your friend about the way they treat themselves and be like, no, be nice to you, drink some water, eat some food, like treat the way that you move into this kind of the same way. And
Yeah.
I'm mute because I also can talk and talk and talk.
Well, that's super helpful, because I gotta say, like, I've learned. So Lashana, his board term ended this past month in April, and I just want to say I've learned so much from Lashana, especially in the realm of community death care. Like, truly, Lashana, I feel like you've been doing like you're the best example I know of someone who's really in it in your community, doing the work. Lashana just got a house donated to her organization, A Sacred Passing, so that they can host people who are doing medical aid and dying, to have, if they don't have a house, to be able to go have a place to die. And that has been many, many years in the making. So I'm just so, excited for you, Lashana. And yeah, you're just such a good example of that community death care in action and what that looks like.
Thanks. I live in a good part of the country for that. The South Seattle is gritty, and we do what we got to do. So yeah, just by proximity, I feel like I get really lucky. But this shit can happen anywhere, y'all. But it can like everybody can do a place to die. Like community care is as easy and as strong as each one of us are. So we could do it.
Yeah, Lauren.
I just wanted to share something that happened last week when I went to a bereaved mother's luncheon. I've been doing community education about home funerals since, I don't know, for a long time. It was because we anticipated that our daughter would die at some point from a congenital heart issue. And so I went to this bereaved mother's luncheon that I'd never been to before, and walked in, and everybody in the room had something in common. And somebody in the group I was friends with on Facebook, but I hadn't met before. And in front of some other people, she mentioned something about having seen that I was an end of life doula. And then she mentioned something that made me say that I was also a home funeral guide, and necks swiveled. I've never seen a reaction like I did in that room, that, and somehow it came up a couple of other times during the lunch in different small groups, always with this one common person. And I can tell you that in the years that I've been doing community education on home funerals, I have never seen so many people who instantly just turned and went, tell me more about that. If I'd known. And it was this, it's always been clear to me that this is something that human beings were meant to do, right? We're meant to care for our own and community. But I've never had that kind of reception before, until being in a room full of mothers, many of whom did not get a chance to see their child or spend time with their child. And it was the most powerful thing. It was just, anyway, thank you all for making sure that as many people as possible know about this. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, we really appreciate. Lauren was on a recent podcast episode of A Path Home, which is our NHFA podcast. So that's definitely something that I recommend people check out too. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
I'll pop a link to the podcast in the chat if anyone wants to check it out.
Oh, thanks for doing that, Wings. Does anyone else have anything they want to share?
Did you ask me? No, I'm sorry. My dog was barking.
Oh, no, it's okay. But you can go if you want to, Angela. Okay. Well, while Lauren is glitching, I feel like that can be a good place to wrap up. I don't know what was going on there, but awesome. Well, thank you all for being here. I think we're just gonna maybe the board members will stay on chat a little bit, but I'll let people go since it's almost the top of the hour. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you. It was
Thank you
really
so
great.
much. It was a
Thank
great
you,
meeting.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
all.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so
Bye.
much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.